Hi, hello, good evening. Welcome to the 11th episode of XENA SALON and Chat Show with me, your host, Kapil Dev. On this Saturday evening, I am here with somebody who is an expert of Chinese language, Chinese studies, all about China as a professor in Chinese studies from prestigious JNU, Jawaharlal Nehru University in Delhi. He travels across the globe talking about the India-China relations. He authors books about China, about Chinese culture, Chinese civilization. He's been on the delegation of the government of India in bridging the states to understand China and the policies. And he wears many hats. And right now, as he gets to talk to me, he is traveling and is at the airport and he finds his time to speak about this whole magnanimous topic about the race of the tortoise and the Chinese hare, that we all get to know that, India being a tortoise in its way and China being the hare about running fast. Are we all there? Are we competing? Are we there to be the biggest superpower forces like how Britain and US has been in the during the 1990s? So let's wait and know from this gentleman all the way from the Delhi airport, if I can get it right, uh, Dr. Bali
Right.
Deepak.
Thank you, Kapil. Pleasure,
Good
pleasure.
evening. So,
Good evening.
first of all, when Rajiv Bhai told about about you, well, I'm a very little unread guy. I mean, you guys are intellectuals for me to have a conversation. So there'll always be more questions from me because of what you guys do. And as a host, I want to ask more questions about all these intriguing topics I have in my head about all these about these big jargons of education and academics that you guys do. So so there are a lot of questions in my mind. Is first things first is when I was growing up, I could only see China through cinema, Jackie Chan, Kung Fu, or maybe about the noodles. This was in
Right.
the 80s and the 90s is what China I understood about China is something about Kung Fu and about Buddhism and about noodles, about people and whole lot of people, China's population and all these things. And then when in 2000 and plus, and the whole new story changes, the industrial revolution, the magnanimous, the magnetic trains that come into China and how China Beijing Olympics happen and then Gonzo happen and how China has become and the football World Cup happened in China and China is ready to host and being one of the biggest Asia's power and eventually now becoming the global superpower competing with the West. A whole transition in the last 30 years has happened. I want to know from you, what is the China story?
Yeah, well, it is still a study in progress for me as well, because I have been associated with China ever since I started to learn Chinese back in 1986. And you can say, almost 40 years down the line, I still am a student of China, still grappling with the China syndrome. I think, ever since I'm engaged in China studies, I have seen massive progress because the Chinese, they feel that they have missed many opportunities. They have missed many opportunities to develop economically, especially during the 19th century, and they, deem it a century of humiliation. You can say start from the Opium Wars, all up to you can say China when attempt liberation under Communist Party of China. So even under Mao, the China believes they have also lost some of the opportunities. If you recall the Great Leap Forward and followed by the 3-year Great Famine, Cultural Revolution, so on and so forth. So these were the years China believed that it should have progressed, but it could not. But I think as progress, it doesn't mean to say that it didn't progress during Mao's era. It did, especially when you talk about, the human index, whether it is literacy, whether it is elevation of poverty. But still, I think China was not an industrialized country. So it started with Tang's reforms back in 1979, and then 4 decades of reforms, it has catapulted China to the second largest economy of the world. And as you rightly said, that it is challenging, the kind of order, international order the United States had established. So it is seeing United States eye to eye. And why not? When China's economy has grown to 18 trillion US dollars in the last 4 decades or so. And I think it is here I try to compare it with India, because when I went to China for the first time in 1991 as a student, China and India, so they were at a similar, you can say, level of development. Our GDP, our per capita income.
I want to ask a question about
strangely, China
1991 is when the even Indian reform started in 1991 during the PV Narasimha
Right.
where liberalization, globalization, privatization happened, and China's 1970s story. Though we were industrialized, we had a licensed Raj system, and then the whole lot of investments came through as such. But what difference that China brings on the table? Because yes, maybe there could be a 15, 22 decade gap between Indian story and Chinese story. But China has taken the world by the storm in the way they're not only dominating in the industrial sector, but also hosting global events like, they get to host Olympics, they get to host this whole lot of the championships and tournaments and global arenas as such. And whereas we are struggling to get one good Olympics coming our way, or the football FIFA World Cup coming our way, they have able to transcend into this global diaspora in a nice subtle manner, though their proficiency in English is not that great.
Yeah, precisely. I think it is again because of the economic muscle China has developed over the period of time. And if you compare with India, so it is 5 times larger than India, or its comprehensive national strength, as so we call it. It is even larger than India if you put together. And as you were talking about industrialization, and especially the monopolization of the global supply chain. For China's entire industrial output, if you say, at this point in time, it accounts for almost 60 to 68% of the entire global. So this is what has shocked the entire West, especially after this COVID. That they wake up that everything is being produced in China, and the kind of quantum leap, I would say, so they have also taken in advanced technology, that it is artificial intelligence. And I have seen it in China, the kind of, you can say, progress they have made, the kind of applications of, high technology, especially the information technology across the sectors, so they have done. Or if I say the universalization of information technology, if it has been materialized anywhere in the world, I think it is China. Universalization, not just in some pockets, large population, so they get benefited out of that. Or you can say the kind of common goods, public goods, which are rolled out by the Chinese government after practicing, so these high technologies. So Chinese citizens, so they are taking advantage of that. But this is not to say that China doesn't have problems. It has some problems. In fact, after COVID and the real estate bubble burst, so they are also grappling a lot of economic problems.
There's always this great debate about democracy and communism and capitalism and federalism. And America is a great example of democracy and capitalism. And you've always seen capitalism with communism failing, with disintegration of USSR and the splitting of it as such. China is holding on to its whole battle of running its the political say of the communist political say. And do you think it's fragile? It's because, again, most of the biggest capitalistic powers right now are democratic powers, and China is one country which is a communist ideological country, driven country, and yet it's doing extremely well in terms of growth and nation.
I would say yes and no at the same time. Yes, because Chinese, you can say, the legitimacy of the Chinese Communist Party. So it hinges on economic growth. It's directly proportional to that. And if there are fissures in growth and the problem in the society, then the legitimacy of the Communist Party kind of it also gets challenged. And this we have seen.
A little louder, Dr. Deepak. Little louder.
Yeah. So I said that. Is it okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
So I'm saying that the legitimacy of the Chinese Communist Party is directly proportional to the economic growth, and we have seen it in the past also how it was challenged when the growth was compromised, and now also after the COVID mishandling of the government. Initially, of course, it handled well, but later on there was mishandling and continuous lockdown, and as a result, the industrial output and various other problems will be propped up. So the legitimacy at this stage. So that is one aspect of it. And Chinese Communist Party, in order to maintain their legitimacy, so it wishes to, spur the kind of growth it has continued, for the last 4 decades. But it would be impossible to maintain that growth for years to come. And second thing, I think which is more important is that it has not totally borrowed, the Marxist-Leninism from the Western, you can say, societies. It has improvised it and has combined it, or you can say, infused the core values of Chinese civilization into it. So which right from Mao, the way, because Mao was well versed in history, court intrigues, dynastic, you can say, strategies. So he well versed in that. So he knew how to, conform the borrowed Western ideology with Marxism-Leninism to the Chinese reality. And later on, even now, the leaders like Xi Jinping, so they have even more enthusiastically gelled the Chinese civilizational values, into the Marxist ideology. So if you see the core socialist values that Xi Jinping is advocating at this point in time, so many of the process,
are you trying to say
the
that
conviction values?
They're able to balance their culture as well as their core political values together in a nice way. That's how the blend is coming
right.
through.
So that is also the question of legitimacy. How the people of China, so they will accept a foreign ideology, and if the local elements of their own philosophies, Buddhist philosophy, Confucian philosophy, Taoist philosophy, they are gelled with the communist philosophy and the large section of society, they would be, accepting it in a better way. So I think that is one of the better experiments China has carried out, and the similar things, so they are being reflected in Xi Jinping's, you can say, diplomacy as far as international relations are concerned. You see, the first pillar of China's diplomacy at this point in time, it is building community for shared future, of shared future for mankind. So which is, of course, similar to what our Prime Minister is advocating, Vasudev Kutumbakam. A similar kind of notion. Again, taking,
Chinese
from
Buddhist
the
culture,
traditional core values. Yeah.
So it is something to do with the religious values, like how Hinduism and Buddhism have a similar core values of love, no hatred, and bringing people together is at the similar lines.
Right. I think you are very right, because if you see the interconnectedness, between India and China, especially the spiritual capital, which has been borrowed by China from India, it is massive. Whether it is in the field of religion, the Buddhism itself, it traveled from India to China. And the kind of Buddhist sutras we lost here in India, so they have been preserved in translation in China. And you know about travelers like Xuanzang, and their works like Journey to the West during Great Khan. On the basis of these various discoveries they were made in India, like Nalanda nowadays. It is primarily, based on what Xuanzang wrote about India during 7th century. Otherwise, we would not have been able to find out, the entire episode of our history, and also the interconnectedness between India and China. And then in field of literature, if you see how our folk tales, especially these stories around the mysteries, so they have traveled to China, and how the Chinese, so they have preserved them. So it could be seen, even theater in especially South India, South China, sorry. So it has Indian influence. And forget about that, even the language itself, the kind of, you will say, vocabularies, they are incorporated in Chinese language, even the modern Chinese language. You will be surprised there are 35,000 vocabularies from Sanskrit present in Chinese language even today. And you can say, the way monosyllabic nature of the Chinese language, it was converted to polysyllab. That is again attributable to Sanskrit, Indian influence. And the entire, you can say, the supernatural stories, surrounding Buddhism or even Hinduism, or dissemination of even our epics, the Mahabharata, to China, it is immense, and people, they don't know about it. You would be surprised to know that, one of the epics of one of the Chinese nationalities, it is based on Valmiki Ramayana, and people, they don't know about it. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So there is a huge, you can say, interconnectedness between India and China for the last 2 millennia. I think that is something which we have to discover. And there are very few people in India, those who know about it. Very, very few people. And it is well preserved in the Chinese traditional textual tradition. Our tradition, it was tradition of Shrutis. We never had a very strong textual tradition. But China had immensely strong textual tradition. So everything is preserved for posterity. Of course, they invented paper, and it is recorded even before paper was invented during 1st century AD. It was recorded in the bamboo scrolls, and before bamboo scrolls, the tortoise shells, so on and so forth. So China had a very, very strong textual tradition comparing India. So therefore, whatever was disseminated in the last 2 millennia from India to China, so it is well recorded. Only thing that you need to produce good sinologists, and then they can, brought it to the fore.
I want to know from you the story that, of course, what mainstream puts about the India-China relations is very different, and the way that the Arunachal that is being fought for, and some of these the Nepal and Tibetan issues that have been cropped up, and of course now you talk about Taiwan, the Chinese Taipei story as such.
Right.
That's how the media perspective puts light. But you, having been traveled and seen China and knowing the culture of China, knowing the people of China, are Chinese that aggressive in nature, or in terms of trying to put the dominion of interest?
I think, as far as people-to-people connections are concerned between India and China, I don't find the kind of anonymity we see in the newspaper, media, so on and so forth. They're
Right.
equally warm. They talk about, this interconnectedness. I think they are well informed about this interconnectedness between India and China. So every time you talk about India, China, so they talk about the you can say these impressive episodes in the history that connected two people. So whether it is Mark, whether it is Kumaraji, whether it is Xuanzang, many other, and thousands of other unsung heroes or cultural ambassadors who come to the country. And even in you can say modern times, there are people like Kotnis, so those who sacrifice their lives for Chinese people, so it is celebrated like a hero in China. And every time when Chinese leaders, so they visit India, so they make a point to visit Kotnis families in India. So they remember those contributions and what they have learned from India. But of course, I think you are pointing to questions like Tibet issue, Taiwan. I would say especially Tibet. So it is because of the colonial and Manchu imperial legacy. I don't blame only British colonialists, but I also blame the Manchu, imperial powers in China. So these both these powers, Manchus, last dynasty in China, Qing China. So they started to expand southwestward. And of course, the motive for that expansion was that they were wary about British expansionism in Tibet, thinking that Tibet would be converted as a protectorate by the British. So the British expansionism in Himalayan states and the Manchu expansionism in, you can say, Xinjiang and Tibet. So it formed the present borders, and the problem started from that. So once the common border was formed, various issues pertaining to the border, so they cropped up, and animosities, cropped up with those issues. And Taiwan again is slightly different. Of course, the colonial legacy is there, but not with the British, with the Japanese colonial legacy, because when Japanese defeated Manchus in 1894-95, Taiwan was ceded to Japan by the last Chinese dynasty. And since then, it remained with Japan. It was only after Second World War when Japan got defeated that so these possessions, so they were given back to China. But China again, since there were two factions, the nationalists and the communists, and the communists, so they emerged victorious, and the nationalists, they had to retreat to Taiwan. And that's why, so this question.
There was this the Chinese story of having only one child with you, during some of the 90s and 2000, and with the effect of that, of course, they could able to reduce their population, which was sizingly growing ahead as such. But do you think that has affected the effectiveness of how China functioned?
I think in the hindsight, yes. If you see the population decrease in China, so now India, has subsidized China to become number one, country after population. So the largest populous country in the world. It was implemented in 1979, not during Mao's time. And even during that time, there were many opposing voices that some of them very renowned economists, even during that time, so they opposed the policies of the natural growth, it needs to be maintained. But since I think, the strong leader after Mao, so he thought that China has various problems, especially the rural China was very poor and impoverished, deprivating. So he thought if China has to progress, perhaps, so they get a check. But now, 40 years after reforms, and China at a certain level of economic growth, people, they are not wanting to have more children. So even if the president, he has advocated that we need to encourage families to have more kids, because China sees after some time, after maybe 100 down the line, the kind of population dividend so they had, it is lost. And of course, they believe that India would be the country which would be leading the population dividend. And secondly, since the older people, percentage of the older people in the population, it is increasing at this point in time. So it is around 35%. But there are estimates that, so maybe by 2049, so almost half the Chinese population, they would be old people. So that is another problem, which China is facing, and the kind of recession, or maybe the kind of social mobility, so which has stagnated in China, especially for the young people at this point in time. So China produced.
So you being an academician, and you always have a close link with industry as well, where you kind of bridge the gap between the industry and academia, and you've been a part of several delegations that you have taken up. And you able to hear me?
I cannot hear you anymore because this earphones, so they are
all right.
That and I don't know, it would be a lot of disturbance.
If you can have, I'll ask one final question before you take the flight to the destination that you've been going through. Talk about your the interest of Industria, Industria, and how cinema and Industria can become a bridging gap between India and China, and we too can become the interconnected superpowers and the economic powers for the future of the world.
I'm sorry, I've not been able to hear you. So
okay, so we will call it a day, because probably you're not able to. Yes, yes, no issues. So you have a safe flight, and thanks for talking to us on this Saturday evening.
We'll pick it up again somewhere.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your time, and have a great flight. Have a safe flight. And that's it for the 11th episode of XENA Star Saloon with me, your host, Kapil Dev. Sorry for the interruption. He's been traveling, yet he has found his time to come on the show live today on Saturday evening. Thank you, Dr. Deepak, and have a safe flight. We look forward to know more of this China and India story in the near future with you. Until the next time, it's me, your host, signing off for the weekend, saying goodbye, namaste, jai hind, and ni hao.